For more than 10 years, Call of Duty wasn't simply successful, it was untouchable. Each November felt like a landmark moment. Records shattered and online multiplayer redefined for an entire generation. In 2009, Modern Warfare 2 generated over $550 million in just 5 days, briefly becoming the biggest entertainment launch in history. Multiplayer lobbies were loud, relentless, and unpredictable. The maps became landmarks. The weapons had personality. For millions, Call of Duty wasn't just a game. It was the place you logged into every night. But as its influence expanded, so did its structure. Behind the scenes, the franchise evolved from a creative powerhouse into a finely tuned production cycle. Multiple studios rotated development, annual releases became mandatory, and financial expectations escalated. Over time, the philosophy shifted. Monetization deepened, progression systems gave way to cosmetic storefronts, skill-based matchmaking sparked division across the community, and in 2020, Warzone launched, drawing more than 30 million players in its first 10 days and transforming Call of Duty into something larger than a yearly release. It wasn't just a title anymore, it was a platform, and platforms demand consistency over risk. Sales figures remained strong, marketing remained massive, but perception began to change. Release after release, the same criticism surfaced, familiar but uninspired. Multiplayer felt calculated, design felt cautious, and innovation felt limited. Players began asking questions. When Black Ops 7 launched, it was positioned as another milestone in a franchise built on routine success. Instead, it marked a turning point. Reviews were mixed to negative. Critics pointed to a lackluster campaign and multiplayer that felt recycled rather than refreshed. Early user scores dropped lower than almost any previous entry in the series. Commercial performance is now a concern. In Europe, physical launch sales were reported at more than 60% below its predecessor, trailing competitors like Battlefield 6. Longtime players voiced frustration, disappointment, and fatigue. This isn't a story of sudden failure, it's a story of gradual death. Of how one of the most dominant franchises in gaming history reached extraordinary heights, and how the system that ensured its continued growth may have slowly reshaped its identity. This is the downfall of Call of Duty. In the early 2000s, the war shooter space was already occupied. World War II games were popular, and Medal of Honor Allied Assault had proven that cinematic combat could work in first person. In 2002, a group of key developers who had worked on Allied Assault left their previous studio and formed a new team, Infinity Ward. The studio was formed by Vince Zambella, Jason West, and Grant Collier. Their goal wasn't subtle. They wanted to build the next evolution of the war shooter, with bigger battles, tighter pacing, and more immersive sense of being a soldier inside a unit, not a lone hero. And almost immediately, Activision backed them, funding development and later acquiring the studio after the first game's success. The first Call of Duty shipped in 2003, and one of its core design choices separated it from a lot of the shooters of that era. It wasn't designed to make you feel like a super soldier. It was designed to make you feel like one person inside a larger operation. Infinity Ward put heavy emphasis on squad-based fighting, with AI teammates meant to push, take cover, and fight alongside you in large-scale battles. They even built internal systems focused on animation, authenticity, and battlefield presence to sell the illusion of being embedded in combat rather than performing it alone. That philosophy shaped everything: the pacing, the mission structure, and the sense of spectacle. The game moved you through set pieces that felt like war film sequences, not because you were invincible, but because the world around you was constantly in motion, and it landed, not just with players, but with the industry. Call of Duty won major recognition early in its life, including BAFTA's first Best Game Award in 2004, and recognition as Game of the Year winner at the DICE Awards. But the important part wasn't just the awards, it was the blueprint. Because Call of Duty didn't succeed by being the most complex shooter, it succeeded by being the most directed shooter, a game that understood cinematic rhythm, pressure, release, escalation, and payoff. In 2004, the series expanded with Call of Duty United Offensive, a PC expansion developed by Grey Matter Studios. It pushed the scale even further, adding new multiplayer content and broadening the Warfront fantasy. In 2005, Call of Duty 2 released on PC, and crucially, it became a launch title for Xbox 360. It put Call of Duty in front of a new console audience at the exact moment online play was becoming mainstream in living rooms, and COD 2 redefined the formula. Smoother gameplay, clearer visual feedback, bigger set pieces, essentially turning the war movie pacing into the series' signature. By the mid-2000s, the franchise was expanding fast, and the structure behind it was taking shape. Infinity Ward wasn't going to be the only team. To maintain momentum, Activision began rotating development across studios, so Call of Duty could become a reoccurring release, not an occasional event. The series was turning into a system. And then in 2007, Infinity Ward made a decision that truly changed everything. They abandoned World War II. In November 2007, Infinity Ward released Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and almost immediately, the franchise changed direction permanently. Until that point, Call of Duty had been defined by World War II, but World War II shooters were saturating the market. Titles like Medal of Honor, Battlefield 1942, and multiple Call of Duty entries had already explored the same era. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare wasn't just a new setting, it was a franchise reset. Instead of historical warfare, it aimed straight at modern conflict, modern weapons, modern aesthetic, and modern geopolitical tension. The campaign leaned heavily into cinematic pacing, influenced by modern action films. Missions like All Gillied Up demonstrated restrained, tension-driven design rather than constant spectacle. A tonal shift that showed confidence in slower, controlled moments. But while the campaign was praised, it wasn't the campaign that redefined gaming. It was the multiplayer. Modern Warfare introduced a progression system that fundamentally reshaped online shooters. Before 2007, multiplayer shooters were largely static. You joined a server, you picked a class, and you played. Modern Warfare added new features, like the player progression system. It's simple. Players earned XP every match. Kills, objective, assist, everything contributed to a leveling system that unlocked weapons, perks, and equipment over time. This created long-term investment. Multiplayer was no longer session-based. It was cumulative. Next, we have the create a class system. Instead of fixed classes, players could build their own loadouts. Primary weapon, secondary weapon, 3 perk slots, equipment, and grenades. The perk system introduced strategic layering. Perk 1, utility, Perk 2, Power, and Perk 3, Tactical. This gave players identity, and playstyles became personal. Next, we have Killstreak Rewards, which may have been the most influential addition. Get 3 kills without dying, UAV. 5 kills, Airstrike. 7 kills, Attack Helicopter. The design genius was psychological. Killstreaks rewarded momentum. They created escalating tension within matches. They turned individual performances into memorable moments. Everybody remembers their best games, where they were just dominating the lobby with attack helicopters. Other franchises would copy this mechanic for over a decade. Weapon attachments and customization was also introduced with attachments like the red dot sights, suppressors, and more. Weapon modification became a tangible progression reward, not just cosmetic. Modern Warfare also refined console matchmaking. Instead of browsing servers, players queued quickly and were placed into games automatically, streamlining access. The friction was removed. You could just jump into a match within seconds. Call of Duty 4's impact was almost immediate. According to Activision reportings, Call of Duty 4 sold over 7 million copies within its first year. It eventually surpassed 13 million copies worldwide across platforms in its early life cycle, becoming one of the best-selling games of its generation. It also won numerous awards, including BAFTA Game Awards for Best Gameplay in 2008 and multiple Game of the Year recognitions from major publications. Xbox Live engagement surged. Modern Warfare became one of the most played titles on Xbox 360 throughout 2008. It dominated online play charts for months after release. The franchise moved from successful shooter to daily habit. Modern Warfare wasn't just popular, it influenced the entire shooting genre. Battlefield adjusted its progression systems, Medal of Honor attempted modernization, dozens of shooters adopted XP-based unlock trees. The perk plus progression plus killstreak formula became the blueprint. But while Modern Warfare was redefining the future, the past wasn't finished yet. In 2008, the franchise rotated studios. Infinity Ward stepped aside and Treyarch took the lead. Then came Call of Duty World at War. On paper, it looked like a step backwards, a return to World War II after the explosive success of Modern Combat, but in execution, it was something else entirely. Where earlier World War II titles leaned into heroism, World at War leaned into brutality. The Pacific campaign emphasized chaos and desperation, flamethrowers clearing bunkers, relentless close-quarter fighting in jungle terrain. The Eastern Front storyline, inspired by the Soviet push toward Berlin, portrayed revenge and devastation. It was darker in tone, harsher in presentation, and commercially, it worked. World at War went on to sell over 15 million copies worldwide, proving that the franchise's momentum wasn't dependent on a single creative team. Call of Duty had become bigger than one studio, but Treyarch's true impact wasn't fully visible at launch. When players finished the campaign, they unlocked a small, unexpected bonus mode, a survival experience set inside a ruined bunker, Nacht der Untoten. There was no elaborate marketing push for it, no promises that it would become a pillar of the franchise. It was an experiment. Waves of undead enemies, barricades to repair, points earned for every shot fired. A mystery box that dispensed randomized weapons, perks like Juggernog that fundamentally changed survivability. It was cooperative, escalating, and endless. Unlike traditional multiplayer, Zombies wasn't about winning a match. It was about lasting longer than before. That subtle difference changed everything. Players began dissecting strategies, counting spawn patterns, mapping optimal routes, and sharing discoveries online. Each subsequent map, Verrückt, Shinonuma, and the map that would make Zombies a phenomenon, Darice, added mechanics, depth, and hidden layers. Zombies became more than a side mode. It became a community engine, and in doing so, Treyarch proved something critical. Call of Duty didn't have to be singular. Infinity Ward had refined competitive dominance with progression and kill streaks. Treyarch introduced cooperative longevity, a mode built on mystery, experimentation, and long-term engagement. Together, they expanded the franchise's creative range. World at War didn't just maintain Call of Duty's upward momentum, it diversified it. Something important had become clear. Call of Duty was no longer experimenting, it was accelerating. Infinity Ward had redefined multiplayer with Modern Warfare. Treyarch had expanded the franchise's boundaries with Zombies, and in 2009, Infinity Ward released a game that would push it beyond gaming culture and into mainstream entertainment. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. If Modern Warfare built the blueprint, Modern Warfare 2 amplified it. The campaign escalated everything. The No Russian mission generated global headlines for its depiction of a civilian massacre, sparking political debate and international scrutiny. But regardless of controversy, it accomplished something rare. It made a video game part of global news cycles. Modern Warfare 2 wasn't just a release, it was an event. The numbers were immediate and historic. According to Activision's official earnings release in November 2009, Modern Warfare 2 generated approximately $550 million worldwide in its first 5 days, setting a new record for the largest entertainment launch at the time, surpassing major Hollywood film debuts. Within months, sales crossed into the tens of millions. Over its life cycle, MW2 would sell more than 20 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling games of its generation. But raw sales only tell part of the story. Xbox Live engagement data at the time showed MW2 dominating online play hours throughout 2010. It became one of the most played titles on Xbox 360 for years. Midnight launches wrapped around city blocks, retailers opened at 12:01 a.m. News outlets covered it like a movie premiere. Call of Duty had become iconic. But what made MW2 transformative wasn't just the spectacle it was upon release, but what it majorly improved in the series. Infinity Ward expanded the multiplayer systems introduced in 2007 and made them more chaotic. They expanded the killstreak system. Instead of stopping at UAVs and helicopters, MW2 introduced Predator missiles, Harrier jets, AC-130 gunships, and most important, tactical nukes. The introduction of the tactical nuke was psychological genius. It just didn't reward performance, it ended the match. For the first time, a single player could trigger a game-ending event purely through dominance. MW2 introduced pro perks, rewarding players for completing challenges tied to specific perks. The system deepened customization and encouraged experimentation. It also further personalized playstyles, stealth builds, explosive builds, and rushing builds. But it also introduced imbalance. Stopping power increased bullet damage, danger close amplified explosives. Certain weapon combinations became dominant, and that imbalance became part of the culture. MW2 multiplayer wasn't always balanced. It was chaotic, and players loved it. Maps like Rust, Terminal, High Rise, and Favela became cultural landmarks. Now, I can go into detail about how good the maps were in this game, but we'd be here all day. MW2 landed at a perfect moment in internet culture. YouTube gaming content was emerging, machinima channels were exploding in popularity, commentary videos, trick shot montages, and competitive sniping, all of it found a home in MW2.
Have you ever been noob-tubed? Have you ever been noob-tubed?
Voice chat culture became iconic. Chaotic lobbies, trash talk, social interaction that felt raw and unscripted.
Where'd you play? Alright, oh my god. Alright, first of all, where'd you play? Not Igor. Leon and J.
How many times do I have to tell you? We have quarterbacks that are bigger, faster, and stronger.
Where'd you play? Mr. Middle Linebacker, where'd you play? Listen,
Brandon Jacobs is at community college. It doesn't matter where you go. Community college.
After the release of MW2, internal problems within Infinity Ward were brewing. In early 2010, shortly after MW2's success, Infinity Ward co-founders Vince Zampella and Jason West were fired by Activision amid contract disputes. Lawsuits followed, and key developers departed and later formed Respawn Entertainment. The creative architects behind Modern Warfare were gone, and the Modern Warfare franchise would never operate the same way again. But Treyarch was watching, and when their turn arrived in November 2010, they didn't just follow Infinity Ward's success. They decided to start their own flagship Call of Duty franchise, Call of Duty Black Ops. The setting of the Cold War was a shift. It allowed Treyarch to blend historical events with fiction, CIA Black Ops missions, Vietnam combat, Soviet interrogation facilities. The viral marketing campaign extended into online teasers and cryptic website elements, feeding speculation across forums and early social media. By the time November 9th, 2010 arrived, anticipation was massive. Midnight launches were once again wrapped around retailers worldwide. According to Activision's official report, Black Ops generated approximately $650 million in its first 5 days, surpassing Modern Warfare 2's record at the time. Within weeks, it became the best-selling game of 2010 in the United States. Over its life cycle, it sold more than 25 million copies worldwide, cementing it as one of the highest-selling titles in franchise history. But numbers alone don't explain why it mattered. The story centered on Alex Mason, a CIA operative being interrogated about mysterious numbers, broadcasts tied to Soviet sleeper operations. Unlike prior campaigns that emphasized cinematic war events, Black Ops leaned into unreliable narration, brainwashing themes, Cold War paranoia, and hallucinations and psychological manipulation. The numbers twist revealing that Mason had been brainwashed and manipulated was one of the franchise's most memorable narrative turns. Missions like Operation 40, Victor Charlie, and Vorkuta blended historical figures and fictional drama. Real-world personalities like President John F. Kennedy appeared in-game, grounding the narrative in recognizable history while pushing conspiracy fiction. Multiplayer was also completely restructured and refined. The new COD point system allowed players to earn currency and manually purchase weapons, attachments, perks, and kill streaks. It reduced early game imbalance and made builds intentional. Unlike MW2, kill streaks did not stack into one another. You couldn't chain a Harrier into a Pavlo into a nuke. This eliminated snowballing and stabilized match flow. Matches felt competitive rather than chaotic. Maps like Nuketown, Firing Range, Summit, Havana, and Grid became staples of the golden era. They followed tighter 3-lane principles and improved spawn logic. The chaos of MW2's vertical unpredictability was replaced with cleaner sightlines and controlled engagements. Treyarch didn't just include zombies, they expanded it. Keener der Toten launched with a layered Easter egg system and deeper lore connections. Subsequent DLC maps like Ascension and Moon introduced full narrative arcs and cooperative puzzle solving. Zombies became a replay engine, a YouTube theory machine, and a co-op alternative to competitive stress. For many players, zombies alone justified the purchase. It gave Call of Duty a second identity. By 2011, Call of Duty wasn't just the biggest shooter, it was the most consistent entertainment launch in gaming. 2 consecutive entries had broken 5-day sales records, MW2 and Black Ops 1. That kind of back-to-back dominance reshaped industry expectations. Battlefield would pivot towards cinematic presentation, Medal of Honor would attempt reinvention, live progression systems became standard across shooters. Black Ops is remembered as iconic because it achieved balance, strong campaign narrative, refined multiplayer structure, deep zombies experience, and record-breaking sales. And for many players, this was the true height of the golden era, the moment where Call of Duty felt polished, focused, and culturally dominant. By 2010, the franchise had delivered 3 consecutive cultural peaks. COD 4 brought innovation, MW2 brought spectacle, and Black Ops 1 brought refinement. And once you hit that many peaks in a row, the only direction left is expectation, and expectation is heavier than innovation. Following the high-profile 2010 departures of founders Vince Zampella and Jason West and dozens of key developers, Activision restructured Infinity Ward while bringing in Sledgehammer Games to co-develop the next installment. The machine kept moving, but the architects were gone. In November 2011, Modern Warfare 3 launched into one of the most anticipated releases in gaming history. Commercially, Modern Warfare 3 was unstoppable at release. According to Activision's official earnings report, the game generated approximately $775 million in its first 5 days, surpassing the record set by Black Ops the year prior. Within 16 days, it crossed the $1 billion revenue mark, making it one of the fastest selling entertainment products ever at the time. By lifecycle estimates, it sold over 30 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling games in the franchise's history. MW3 served as the conclusion to the Modern Warfare storyline. It brought back iconic characters like Captain Price, Soap McTavish, and Vladimir Makarov. The campaign escalated into full-scale global warfare. New York, Paris, Berlin, and London. It was cinematic, explosive, and polished. But unlike the shock of MW2's No Russian, MW3 felt like resolution rather than reinvention. It was satisfying, it just wasn't surprising. And surprise had been a core ingredient of the franchise's rise at this point. Modern Warfare 3 introduced meaningful changes, but they weren't really anything extremely game-changing like we were used to. Strike packages. Killstreaks were restructured into 3 categories: Assault, Support, and Specialist. The Specialist package, in particular, rewarded players with additional perks instead of killstreaks, a nod towards competitive balance. This was a smart addition, but it didn't fundamentally alter the multiplayer loop. The Specialist bonus was also the only form of killstreaks you can use to get a tactical nuke, which was renamed to the MOAB. All 25 kills had to be strictly gun kills, which definitely made it more hard to obtain, but also less fun than MW2's nuke. Players could unlock proficiencies like reduced recoil or increased stability, adding another layer of customization. A new co-op survival mode expanded on Spec Ops from MW2, offering wave-based combat against AI enemies. It was enjoyable, but it didn't even stand close to zombies. MW3 retained the same core engine lineage as MW2, but it felt faster. Sprint recovery timing and map density created constant engagement. The pacing rarely slowed. In MW2, you had rhythm. You had rush, pause, reposition, flank, explode. In MW3, the action rarely breathed. Constant gunfights, constant respawns, and for some players, that felt energetic, but for others, it felt exhausting. Many MW3 maps were slightly smaller on average, more symmetrical, and less vertically chaotic. Some of the most notable launch maps included Dome, Arcaden, Mission, Seatown, Resistance, Hard Hat, Village, and Bootleg. They weren't poorly designed, they were structured. 3-lane flow was more consistent, sightlines were more controlled, and engagements were predictable. And that predictability is where the downgrade feeling began. Take Dome. Small, fast, and circular. Fun, yes, but limited in depth. Compare that to High Rise or Quarry from MW2, maps that allowed range dominance, vertical flanks, and chaotic mid-map clashes. MW3 maps felt compressed. They encouraged safe rotations rather than risky map control. Matches felt tighter but less explosive. Players felt that almost everything about MW3 was a downgrade from MW2. Another subtle factor was the color palette. MW2 had contrast. You had desert yellows, snowy whites, bright airport interiors, and Brazilian hillside chaos. MW3 leaned heavy into muted grays and browns. War-torn urban settings blurred together visually. Maps felt similar in tone. MW3 was technically more polished. MW2 was messy, unbalanced, chaotic, and memorable. MW3 was structured, refined, safe, and less distinct. The franchise had moved from let's make something wild to let's make something stable. Review scores were still strong overall, and sales were massive, but player discourse changed. For the first time, you started hearing, quote, "It's basically MW 2.5. It feels recycled. It's the same game again." That phrase, the same game, would become louder in the years ahead. Modern Warfare 3 didn't begin the downfall, but it normalized repetition. And once repetition becomes accepted at a billion-dollar scale, innovation starts disappearing. But Call of Duty Black Ops 2 wasn't just another annual entry. It was the last time Call of Duty felt bold before the fatigue truly set in. After Modern Warfare 3 was criticized for playing it safe, Treyarch did something different. They took a risk. By 2012, the franchise had delivered 4 massive back-to-back commercial hits, 2 record-breaking 5-day launches, and a stabilized annual development cycle. The danger was repetition, so Treyarch pivoted. Instead of returning to the Cold War, they jumped forward, not modern day, the near future. Black Ops 2 split its campaign timeline between the late Cold War and the year 2025. Futuristic drones, robotic units, advanced optics, and directed energy weapons. It wasn't science fiction in the jetpack sense, it was grounded futurism, plausible military technology, futuristic just far enough to feel fresh. That decision alone separated from the World War II to modern, back to World War II, back to modern loop the franchise had been cycling through. It signaled evolution. This is where Black Ops 2 genuinely innovated. For the first time in franchise history, the campaign introduced player choice, multiple endings, branching story paths, and strike force missions, which were real-time strategy-like scenarios. Your decisions affected which characters lived or died. Failure wasn't always a restart, it altered the narrative. That was a drastic shift for a franchise known for linear, cinematic roller coasters. It gave replay value to a mode many players have begun treating as a one-weekend experience. If Modern Warfare introduced Create a Class, Black Ops 2 perfected customization. The Pick 10 system removed rigid categories. Instead of 1 primary, 1 secondary, 3 perks, and 2 grenades, you had 10 allocation points. Want 6 perks and no secondary weapon? Fine. Want a fully loaded primary with multiple attachments and minimal perks? Also fine. This system eliminated filler. Every slot was intentional. It deepened build diversity and reduced wasted loadout space. To this day, many players consider Pick 10 to be the most refined class system the franchise ever introduced. Black Ops 2 replaced kill streaks with score streaks. You earn streaks from capturing flags, securing objectives, assists, and supporting teammates. This shifted multiplayer incentives. Objective play was rewarded, camping was slightly discouraged, and team contribution mattered more. It was a subtle but meaningful design philosophy shift. Zombies expanded again. Maps like Transit, Mob of the Dead, and Origins introduced deeper Easter eggs, evolving storyline arcs, and increasingly cinematic design. Origins in particular became a fan favorite, complex, layered, and mythological. Commercially, Black Ops 2 performed massively. According to Activision's 2012 earnings report, it generated approximately $500 million in its first 24 hours and $1 billion in its first 15 days. It became one of the best-selling games of 2012 and ultimately sold tens of million copies worldwide over its life cycle. But here's the difference. The conversation changed. Instead of "it feels the same," players were saying "this feels new." Black Ops 2 restored momentum. It showed that annual releases didn't have to mean stagnation. It proved innovation was still possible within the machine, but the next entry would be judged against that standard. Black Ops 2 wasn't the beginning of the decline. It was the last true creative peak before experimentation became desperation. In 2013, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One were set to launch, a new console generation. The expectation wasn't just another Call of Duty, it was reinvention. Infinity Ward marketed Ghosts as that reinvention. New engine, new setting, and new characters. A clean break from the Modern Warfare storyline. The message was clear. This was the future of the franchise. The reveal trailer emphasized destruction, collapsing buildings, and dynamic map events. Infinity Ward promoted what they called a next-gen engine, though later technical analysis showed it was a heavily modified iteration of the existing IW engine rather than a ground-up rebuild. The campaign centered on a new threat, a South American federation that had destabilized the United States. A military dog named Riley was prominently featured in marketing, becoming a viral talking point. The tone was serious, patriotic, post-apocalyptic. It looked ambitious. Commercially, Ghost opened strong. Activision announced that retailers had sold in over $1 billion worth of copies to stores worldwide at launch. But this was the first time analysts and outlets began distinguishing between shipments and actual player sell-through. And over time, reports indicated that Ghosts underperformed compared to Black Ops 2 in certain regions. In the UK, launch sales were reportedly down compared to the previous year. The franchise was still massive, but the upward trajectory had stalled. Multiplayer is where the stumble became visible. Ghosts launched with larger maps, much larger. Maps like Stonehaven, Siege, Chase'em, and Flooded featured wide sightlines, complex terrain, and more open spaces. The intention was tactical realism. The result was slower pacing. Players accustomed to the tight engagement loops of Black Ops 2 and MW2 suddenly found themselves sprinting long distances without action. Matches felt stretched, and the rhythm was gone. Ghosts featured one of the fastest time to kill models in the franchise at the time. Gunfights were often decided instantly. This reduced outplay potential and increased frustration. Where BO2 rewarded reaction and positioning, Ghost often punished visibility. Infinity Ward expanded customization beyond classes, introducing full character model customization, squad members, and cosmetic personalization. On paper, this was evolution, but in practice, it didn't address the core gameplay concerns players were feeling. The customization was deeper, but the matches felt flatter. The campaign attempted to build a new long-term saga, but unlike Captain Price or the Cold War conspiracy arc of Black Ops, Ghost's narrative didn't latch onto the culture. It just wasn't groundbreaking like it was hyped up to be. Instead of zombies, Ghost introduced a new cooperative mode, Extinction. Players fought alien creatures in structured missions. It was mechanically interesting, featuring progression trees, class builds, layered objectives, but it lacked the mystique and cultural obsession of zombies. It felt like a replacement rather than an expansion, and players noticed. For the first time since 2007, the dominant community conversation wasn't hype, it was disappointment. You started hearing, the maps are too big, it feels slow, and this doesn't feel like Call of Duty. Because up until Ghosts, even when entries felt similar, they still felt aligned with the franchise's identity. Ghosts felt off. Not broken, just misaligned. But if Call of Duty Ghosts felt misaligned, then Call of Duty Advanced Warfare felt like a pivot. Not a refinement, but a reinvention. By 2014, Activision had quietly transformed Call of Duty into a 3-studio rotation: Infinity Ward, Treyarch, and now Sledgehammer Games. Sledgehammer, who had co-developed Modern Warfare 3, now had full control. And instead of returning to classic boots-on-the-ground combat, they went forward. Far forward. Advanced Warfare introduced the exosuit, boost jumps, air dashes, vertical evasion, and momentum-driven movement. For the first time, Call of Duty combat was no longer primarily horizontal. Gunfights were now multi-layered vertically. Players could boost over cover, dash sideways mid-gunfight, engage from rooftops instantly, and reposition in mid-air. It drastically increased the skill ceiling, but it also fundamentally changed the rhythm of Call of Duty. The grounded pacing of MW2, Black Ops, and MW3 The predictable map flow was gone. Engagements became faster, more erratic, and more difficult to track. For some players, this was exhilarating. For others, it felt like Call of Duty was abandoning its roots. The Jetpack era began here, and it divided the player base. Some players loved the increased skill ceiling, the faster pacing, and the futuristic aesthetic. Others felt like it didn't feel like Call of Duty, it resembled arena shooters like Titanfall, and the grounded identity was gone. This wasn't simple fatigue no more. This was an identity crisis. For the first time, the community wasn't debating balance, they were debating philosophy. What is Call of Duty supposed to be? Boots on the ground military shooter or a futuristic movement sandbox? But Advanced Warfare introduced something that would play a huge role in the downfall of Call of Duty. Supply drops. Randomized loot crates containing cosmetic gear, weapon variants with stat changes, and character customization items. This was a significant shift. For the first time, gameplay affecting weapon variants could be obtained through randomized systems. It wasn't fully pay to win, but it blurred the line. This marked the beginning of monetization becoming a visible layer of the multiplayer experience.
120 pack
At a time.
Oh shit.
I got the royalty mores.
So while Call of Duty Advanced Warfare introduced movement as evolution, then Call of Duty Black Ops 3 perfected it, and in doing so, it created both the peak and the only elite entry of the Jetpack era. By 2015, Treyarch had a reputation. They were the studio that stabilized Modern Warfare 2's chaos. They were the studio that innovated with Black Ops 2's Pick 10. They were trusted. So when they leaned fully into advanced mobility, players followed, at least at first. Commercially, Black Ops 3 was massive. It became the best-selling game of 2015 in the United States. Activision reported strong digital sales growth, with Black Ops 3 becoming one of the most digitally purchased entries up to that point. Over its life cycle, it sold tens of millions of copies worldwide. Financially, the Jetpack era was working, but sentiment was more complicated. By 2015, the community had split into clear camps. Players who loved the advanced movement skill gap, players who wanted boots on the ground combat back, and casual players overwhelmed by speed and tracking demands. The barrier to entry had increased. Older players who grew up on MW2 and Black Ops 1 felt displaced, while younger competitive players thrived. Call of Duty had always balanced accessibility with mastery. Black Ops 3 tipped that balance toward mastery, and when accessibility declines, volume declines. The franchise was still strong, but it wasn't universal no more. Supply drops also returned, now including weapon variants and cosmetic items. Some DLC weapons were locked behind RNG systems, and community frustration grew louder. Not enough to derail the game, but enough to signal tension. And by 2016, the Jetpack formula had run its course for a large portion of the community. When Infinite Warfare's reveal trailer dropped, the reaction was immediate and historic. The trailer quickly became one of the most disliked videos in YouTube gaming history at the time, a public signal that fatigue had turned into rejection.
Let's look at it this way. Infinite Warfare. It looks like fucking dog shit. It looks like a fucking mod for fucking Minecraft where you have guns and you have kill streaks.
This is by far the worst Halo game I have ever played.
The problem wasn't polish, the campaign was ambitious, full space combat, zero gravity sequences, and a surprisingly grounded performance from Kit Harington as the antagonist. The problem was direction. Players had been asking for boots on the ground. Instead, they got space warfare. Movement systems remained advanced, combat remained vertical, the futuristic tone intensified, and for many long-term fans, Call of Duty no longer resembled the franchise they'd grown up with. Commercially, Infinite Warfare underperformed compared to prior entries. Analysts reported lower launch sales than Black Ops 3 in key regions. Activision acknowledged softer demand relative to expectations during earnings discussions. The franchise was still profitable, but the trajectory was no longer upward. For the first time since 2007, Call of Duty felt culturally defensive rather than dominant. And in 2017, Call of Duty World War II arrived. This would be where the franchise would return to its roots. No jetpacks, no wall running, and no thrusters. The marketing leaned heavy into boots on the ground. World War II performed solidly, especially at launch. It was the best-selling game of 2017 in the US, but it felt like restoration, not reinvention. The franchise had stabilized, not evolved. Then came Call of Duty Black Ops 4. No traditional campaign, a heavy multiplayer focus, zombies expanded, and most importantly, Blackout, Call of Duty's first Battle Royale mode. This was the franchise following industry trends, particularly the explosion of Fortnite and PUBG. Blackout was well received, but it seemed as if Call of Duty was now adapting to the market, not defining it. In October 2019, Infinity Ward rebooted the name that built the empire, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. This wasn't a sequel, it was a reimagining. New engine, new animation system, heavier, more grounded gunplay, slower tactical pacing, darker, more controversial campaign tone, and visually, it was a leap forward. Mechanically, it returned to boots on the ground realism, but with a new emphasis on weight and immersion. Modern Warfare 2019 was a massive commercial success. Activision reported that Modern Warfare generated over $600 million in sales within its first 3 days, making it the best-selling Call of Duty launch of the current console generation at the time. The franchise had found its footing again, but something even bigger was coming. In March 2020, Infinity Ward launched Call of Duty Warzone. Free-to-play, 150 players, shared progression, and live service updates. Within 10 days, Warzone surpassed 30 million players according to Activision. This was the most important structural shift in franchise history. Call of Duty was no longer just an annual premium title, it was now a platform. Warzone unified progression, integrated weapons across titles, and became the franchise's cultural anchor. And for a brief moment, it worked. The player base surged, streaming exploded, and the relevance of the franchise had returned. After Warzone blew up with over 30 million players in 10 days, it was clear where the attention was going. Warzone made money every single day through battle passes, skins, bundles, and crossovers. That steady money matters more than a one-time $70 sale. So the focus shifted. Instead of make the best multiplayer maps this year, it became make sure everything works with Warzone. New guns? They have to work in Warzone. New operators? They're mainly for Warzone. Balance changes? They're often made for Warzone first. The yearly multiplayer started feeling like support for Warzone, not the other way around. Warzone didn't just stay tied to one game. It absorbed Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and Call of Duty Vanguard. Each of those games had different weapon balance, movement speed, recoil styles, and engine tweaks. Now all of that had to exist in one place. This caused broken weapon metas, constant balance patches, huge file sizes, and confusing menus.
How the f do I play the game? How do I play this game?
It felt messy. Before Warzone, multiplayer was the main event. After Warzone, multiplayer became a place to level guns for Warzone, a way to unlock attachments faster, camo grind, and a way to sell the yearly title. Some players started skipping the multiplayer entirely. They just played Warzone. That changed how much effort and creativity went into traditional maps and modes. Old Call of Duty focused on fast matches, memorable maps, and tighter pacing. Warzone focuses on keeping players online longer, weekly updates, seasonal resets, and constant content drops. That means development time goes toward events, skins, limited time modes, and store bundles. Instead of bold changes to core gameplay, the goal became to keep people logged in, not to reinvent the experience. In 2022, Warzone 2 launched alongside MW2 as a clean reset of the Battle Royale. Major changes included slower movement, no loadout drops at launch, backpack inventory systems, AI strongholds, and new looting mechanics. It was meant to be more strategic, but many players preferred the faster, simpler Warzone 1 formula. Within months, major systems were reverted, loadouts returned, movement was sped up, and UI changes were made. That rapid backtracking signaled something important. The reset didn't align with the audience. Modern Warfare 2 had a massive launch, but Steam player counts dropped significantly within months. Warzone 2 player numbers declined faster than the original Warzone did at its peak.
See, I'm here. We're done.
I'm done. I'm fucking done. Dude, I can't fucking stand this game. Game's trash. I'm just like, boom, I gotta get it off. I gotta get it out. I gotta uninstall this fucking game. Until I see some dramatic improvements, a completely new map, different fiction, I'm done. I'm having a hard time enjoying that game, man. I'm killing brain cells.
And this is where the real downfall of the franchise truly began. Modern Warfare 2 2022 felt like a worse version of Modern Warfare 2019, with some of the most godforsakenly awful maps I've ever played. But Infinity Ward had an answer to all the backlash. In 2023, for the first time in franchise history, Call of Duty released a direct sequel to the previous year's title. No studio rotation reset, no new subseries, no tonal shift. Just Modern Warfare 2 to Modern Warfare 3. The annual formula had always relied on contrast. Black Ops felt different from Modern Warfare. Treyarch felt different from Infinity Ward. Modern Warfare 3 felt like an expansion sold as a full game. And players noticed immediately, even calling it a DLC to Modern Warfare 2. The campaign was one of the most criticized parts of the release. It introduced open combat missions, sandbox-styled objectives within large spaces. Instead of tightly scripted cinematic missions, many sections felt like Warzone-style maps repurposed for solo play. Players described it as short, underdeveloped, and rushed. The main selling point was remade maps from the original Modern Warfare 2, Terminal, High Rise, Favela, Rust, and Skid Row. Instead of building a new identity, MW3 leaned heavily on nostalgia. For older players, that was appealing. But now the franchise was relying on its past to generate excitement rather than creating. The franchise felt tired, not broken, not dead, just stretched thin. And when a series that once set trends begins recycling its own highlights to maintain interest, it tells you something important. Call of Duty was no longer chasing the future, it was preserving the past. After the fatigue surrounding Modern Warfare 3, the franchise desperately needed momentum. In 2024, Treyarch returned with Call of Duty Black Ops 6. When Call of Duty Black Ops 6 was revealed, the headline feature was Omni Movement. The pitch was simple: sprint in any direction, dive, slide, and strafe fluidly, and maintain gun control while moving laterally. It was meant to make combat feel more dynamic and cinematic. The marketing framed it as the biggest movement innovation in years. As Call of Duty moved into the live service era, one system became one of the most debated topics in the community: skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM. This was a hidden matchmaking system that Call of Duty implemented. Modern Warfare 2019 is when players really started noticing how hard the game was becoming due to this matchmaking system that was working against them. The idea is simple. The game tries to match you with players around your skill level. On paper, that sounds fair, but many long-term players hated it. They argued that every match felt sweaty, there were no relaxed games anymore, playing well meant harder lobbies in the next match, and casual play felt punished. For years, older Call of Duty titles mixed skill levels more loosely. Some matches were easy, some were hard. It felt random. With stricter SBMM, players felt like they were constantly being evaluated. Instead of hopping on to unwind, many said it felt like ranked mode all the time. The outrage wasn't just about difficulty, it was about feeling manipulated. Players believed the system was built for retention, not fun, and once that idea took hold, players started losing trust. To this day, Activision has yet to ever speak on skill-based matchmaking, and this really lost a lot of players' trust in the franchise.
We've caught them in so many lies. They've gotten community noted on Twitter a few times now. I'm sorry, I just don't buy anything they are selling me.
After the back-to-back Modern Warfare cycle and complaints of repetition, Omni Movement was positioned as the feature that would separate Black Ops 6 from the 2019 through 2023 formula. But that wasn't a big enough deal to make people like the game. At launch, reactions were mixed. Some players liked the game, but others felt it was awful. The problem wasn't that Omni Movement was necessarily bad, but that the game didn't do enough to justify a $70 purchase. At launch, Black Ops 7 saw the typical Call of Duty spike on Steam, but within a few months, congruent player counts dropped significantly, following the now familiar pattern. The games have a great launch, then rapidly decline within weeks after release. Steam charts show decline from launch within weeks, falling outside the top congruent rankings more quickly than older entries did during their peak years. After Black Ops 6, the general agreement upon long-term fans of the series was that Call of Duty was dead. Warzone was also declining, shrinking drastically from its peak. Twitch viewership dropped from pandemic highs, and player counts were reaching all-time lows. Warzone went from explosive growth to steady engagement. By the time Black Ops 6 launched, players were already sensitive to monetization. The complaints centered around bright cartoonish operator skins, crossover characters that didn't match tone, anime-style tracers and reactive camos, and outfits that felt disconnected from the game's setting. For a franchise that once marketed around grounded military tone, especially under the Black Ops name, that tonal clash hit harder. When players boot up a Cold War style or semi-grounded shooter and see American Dad, immersion breaks instantly, and immersion used to be Call of Duty strength. Many believed that Call of Duty was going through an identity crisis and just trying to print money out of the item shop and be more kid-friendly, like Fortnite. Then Treyarch decided to follow suit and do exactly what MW2 and MW3 did and drop back-to-back titles. Black Ops 7 was marketed as a sequel to Black Ops 2 set in 2035. But upon its release, it was being completely overshadowed by Battlefield 6, which ended up selling way more than Black Ops 7 did. For the first time, Call of Duty was no longer the only game in town, and it was reported that Black Ops 7 was the worst-selling Call of Duty game since 2007. Black Ops 7 release was so bad that it failed to even peak at over 100,000 players on release on the Steam charts, while Battlefield 6 had over 700,000 players on Steam. Even Warzone was completely irrelevant at this point, failing to even reach the heights of Warzone 2.0. So what exactly happened? Well, for years, Call of Duty strength was clarity. You knew what you were getting. Tight multiplayer maps, fast grounded gunfights, a cinematic campaign, and a distinct tone per sub-series. Each release felt like a chapter. Now it feels like a new season. When Warzone launched, it saved the franchise's momentum. It brought in over 30 million players in its first 10 days. It dominated Twitch, but it also changed priorities. Warzone wasn't just a mode, it became the foundation. Every weapon now had to work in Battle Royale, every cosmetic had to stand out in 100-player lobbies, and every seasonal update had to feed the Warzone machine. Multiplayer stopped being the center, it became support. Now cosmetics didn't start the decline, but they became the most visible sign of change. In earlier eras, Call of Duty's tone was consistent. Even when stylized, it felt grounded. In the modern era, operator skins became kid-friendly. Neon suits, animated tracers, celebrity crossovers, and reactive weapons with glowing effects. The store updated constantly, bundles rotated every week. For many players, it began to feel like the storefront was evolving faster than the maps. For some players, that was fun, but for most, it felt like the series lost its identity. And then there's the schedule. No breaks, no time to build hype naturally, no real reset between sub-series. Modern Warfare, back-to-back. Black Ops, back-to-back. Same menus and same seasonal model. And slowly, the feeling disappeared. Not overnight, not with one bad launch, but with repetition, with predictability, with a machine that never stopped long enough to reinvent itself. The midnight lines are gone. The shock moments are gone. The cultural takeover is gone. Sales are at an all-time low. Launches now feel irrelevant. Call of Duty didn't crash, it didn't vanish. It died a slow death of repetition, lies about matchmaking systems, uninspiring content, and most of all, greed. Call of Duty didn't lose to another game. It lost to itself.